welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher, and welcome back to the 12 days of Flipmas. Today is day 4, so I figured we would bring you guys to our storage unit that is completely packed full of pieces that I have been hoarding for probably about the last year. So I'm going to open this up and we're going to get started with a beginner-friendly furniture flip. So the piece that I'm going to be pulling out today is right here. We're going to do a French provincial. I chose this one as a beginner-friendly flip because there's not really a ton of work that needs to be done to it. It's pretty large, but it can still be beginner-friendly. So I'm going to get this loaded up in the Jeep. We're going to head home to get started. I'm in the garage. Here we are, finally home with this guy all unloaded. Really quick before we get started on the actual flip, I just wanted to thank Dixie Belle for sponsoring this video. I will be using all of their products in this video. And again, this is gonna be a beginner-friendly video. So if you are new at furniture flipping, be sure and really pay attention because I am going to go over the basics. And if you're interested in any of the products, everything will be linked down below in the description. And it's time to get started. So every single time you get a piece of furniture, your first duty is to just really make sure that it is a piece of furniture, especially when you're starting out, that doesn't really have a ton of damage to it. The reason being is because since you're in your early stages, you don't want to have your whole time taken up by fixing different things such as broken drawers or huge gouges or peeling veneer and so on and so forth. So that is why I chose this piece to show you guys just how easy it can be to flip furniture. Now, I will say this is a quite large piece. It has 9 drawers. So with that being said, be careful on what size piece you choose. The reason I think that this one's still okay for a beginner piece is because it, again, doesn't have much work to be done to it. All it really needs to be done to it is be cleaned and be painted. So that is exactly what I am going to take you guys through right now. So the first thing that you are going to do after you've got your piece is you're going to remove the hardware. I typically like to put my hardware in a separate container, and the reason being is because sometimes I will keep my hardware and replace it once I'm done painting it and all of that jazz, but also sometimes I don't want to replace it onto the same piece, but maybe I'll save it for later. This one I'm going to be saving and putting right back on once we're all done painting at the end. So that is why I'm going to be putting it inside of a container so that we don't lose any of the pieces. To remove the hardware, you can use 3 different things. I am using an electric screwdriver, which is by Ryobi. I'll link that down below in the description as well. Or you can use a regular hand crank screwdriver, or you can use a drill that has a drill bit that matches the screw inside of your hardware. So that is either going to be Phillips head or a flat head. So just as long as you've got that, you can use any of those 3 tools. Now that all of the hardware is removed, it is time to go ahead and grab some cleaner. So the reason that we're gonna clean the piece is because we want our paint to adhere, but we don't want it to adhere to all of the oils and dirt that are on the dresser. These pieces of furniture that you grab to refinish generally are gonna be, older pieces that haven't had the most amount of love and being taken care of over the years. So chances are they're going to have a lot of that dust, grease, grime, dirt, everything all over it. And so we want to get all of that off so that our paint adheres to the actual surface and not to that dirt, because that dirt and oils, those will all rub off and the paint won't stay on if we don't get all of that cleaned up. So Dixie Belle has a cleaner called White Lightning, and it's a granule substance. So what is the most common is to grab a spray bottle and label it White Lightning, put warm water in it, and then dump about a tablespoon or two inside of the bottle, and then you'll have that for, well, until it runs out, and then you can just do it again and again, and that really saves on the White Lightning, but it also makes it a lot easier to actually clean off. You're just going to spray a pretty liberal amount all over the dresser, and then you're gonna take your rag and go ahead and just clean, clean, clean. You're gonna scrub if it needs to be scrubbed, and you will probably find that you're gonna maybe need more than one rag to do this with, because it is going to get pretty dirty pretty quick. Okay, so this is exactly why we clean. I don't know if you guys can quite see how dirty these rags are, but they were once white and now they are brown and yellow. Lots of gunk on this one. So now that we've got the White Lightning all wiped off, we're gonna grab a fresh bottle of water and in a spray bottle, and I'm gonna do the same exact thing. What we're doing now is we're getting all of the residue from the White Lightning off so that we've got a completely brand new clean surface. We're moving and grooving. Okay. I know it's kind of a lot of talking, but I really want to set you guys up for success. So our next step after we are done cleaning with the White Lightning, we are going to be using some Surf Prep rad pads, which you can also get on Dixie Belle's website. And I wanted to just let you guys know that you don't have to have all the fancy tools to get started. Those can be investments down the road. You don't even technically need a hand sander as long as your piece, doesn't need to be sanded too much. So with this piece, all that I am going to be doing is scuff sanding. And what scuff sanding is going to do is it's going to allow the paint to adhere again. This is prep is the most important part of the furniture flip, because at the end of the day, the goal is to get the paint to stick onto the surface. This surface is so smooth and glossy, so we need to roughen it up a little bit, and that is where the sandpaper comes in. That is why we call it a scuff sand. We're going to scuff it up a little bit. So with that being said, these packs of rad pads come with 4 different grits. So each grit is a little bit of a different texture. The white ones are gonna be a medium texture, somewhat like about a 100 grit of real sandpaper. And this is going to be pretty coarse. So that is that. And then there is a blue one, which is called fine. So this is gonna be less coarse than the medium. This could be used for scuff sanding, or it could be used to get a few small blemishes out, but medium would probably be better for that. The yellow is a super fine and the red is very fine. These are very similar, and what I would use these for is to smooth out paint in between coats. So we'll be putting these aside and using these ones later, but we're gonna start out with the medium grit because, again, like I said, my surface is super glossy. So you can either scuff sand with the medium grit or the fine grit. We're gonna start out with the medium. It is also important that you keep yourself safe when you're flipping furniture. So since I'm not using my sander that I usually use that's hooked up to my vacuum dust extractor, which really helps take that dust out of the air, I am going to be putting on my RZ mask. If you don't have one of these are one of the most essential parts of, or one of the most essential tools to have before you even begin flipping. So this is really going to help protect my lungs. It's got a filter in there so it won't go through into my body. It'll get all caught up right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that on, and we're gonna begin to hand sand. So I know it might be a little bit difficult to see on camera, but the scuff sanding really did scuff it up. You can see the dust when you're in person. So that's what you want to look for, is just the dust. And so that also you can't see any more of that gloss anymore. And then now that there is a bunch of dust, I am going to just take the same water that I had earlier, spray it down just a little bit, and then wipe back all the dust. It might seem like a little bit of a tedious process to clean it and then sand it and then kind of clean it again basically. But the reason that you're doing it again is because the first time you clean, you're getting all the oils out so that you don't, when you're sanding, you don't rub those oils into the surface of the furniture. Okay, now that we are all clean, and we are all scuff sanded and we're all dusted back, I'm gonna go ahead and take the drawers out so that it's gonna be a little bit easier for me to paint. If there's anything inside of the dresser as far as things that need to be cleaned, if it's dusty, things like that, I'll also go ahead and do that before we begin to paint. So for this part, there is some dust here in the inside of the dresser. So it's important that you also go ahead and clean that. And again, you could do that at the beginning when you're cleaning the rest of the outside of the dresser, or you can do it once you take the drawers out. It's really up to you. I do it both ways, different times, just really depends. But I'm gonna also use the white lightning just to clean it out a little bit. I don't know about you, but if I was buying a dresser that looked new on the outside, but then I took the drawers out and it was dusty, I probably wouldn't like that very much. So I think it's important that you clean it out and start fresh and new for your new client and its new owner. All right, you guys, it is time for the best part of furniture flipping. We get to paint. Okay, so I wanted to make this as easy as possible for you guys as a beginner flip. So I chose to grab some all-in-one paint by Dixie Belle, and it is their silk all-in-one mineral paint line. So what that means in a nutshell is that it includes a primer that's gonna help it adhere to the surface, as well as the paint and the top coat. So that means that this is just a one-step paint. As long as your piece isn't bleeding through, and that is a whole nother story, but as long as that's not happening, you can use this, just this, for all primer, paint, and top coat built into one. Generally, you're gonna need 2 or 3 coats depending on coverage, but 2 is for sure recommended no matter what, because that'll really help that top coat set up really nicely and get the most protection when the piece is being used. So I chose to grab the color Black Sands, and it's a very blackish gray color. So it's not quite as deep dark black as their Anchor, which is their true black color, but it is more of a muted grayish black, which I'm excited to see on this French Provincial piece, which, by the way, I don't think I told you yet that I got it for $75 off of Facebook Marketplace, and it happened to be right up in this neighborhood, so really not a far drive to grab this piece. So We're gonna go ahead and get started. I am going to be using the Scarlet brush by Dixie Belle as well. I just really like the way that this helps the paint go on super smoothly. I'm going to show you guys my technique when painting to help lessen those brush stroke marks. But one other great thing about the silk paint is that it is a self-leveling paint, which also will really help get rid of those brush stroke marks. Let's do it. So you first want to make sure your paint is pretty shaken up and make sure you stir it as well. I already stirred mine, so it's all mixed together. You want all those components to be one component together. So I'm gonna go ahead and dip my brush, and then we are going to get started. So you're going to start in the middle and you're gonna brush your paint out. And at the end, you want to make sure that you go from one side to the other to get that smooth finish. With the silk paint, you don't want to go over it too many times because that will sort of lessen those self-leveling qualities, but you do want to try and get it as flattened out and as spread out as possible. A little bit goes a long way with this paint. It is important that you get brushes that are specifically meant for furniture painting, because any old regular brush really doesn't help eliminate those brush stroke marks like these types of brushes do. Okay, got the whole top done here. I will say that sometimes it looks worse before it looks better. So there still are going to be a few brush lines, but that's mostly because it didn't completely get full coverage. So on that second coat, it will look a lot better. Now we are going to be moving on to the base of the dresser. Now that the top is complete and it is drying, it's important that we let that dry fully before we apply that coat number 2. So let's move on to the base here. So while the big dresser is drying over here, we're gonna go ahead and paint the drawers. With the drawers, I just like to put them flat on the ground like this, and that way I can get a nice flat surface here. Also, one quick tip is that when you are removing your drawers, especially when there's a lot of drawers, like mine has 9, I would recommend that you put numbers on the corner of your drawer. So I put 1 all the way through 9 according to where I grabbed the drawer from. Obviously you can do it for whatever order works for you. I just started at the top corner, went down, 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 all the way 1 through 9. And that way your drawers will go exactly where you grab them from, and you know that they will fit, because a lot of dressers are very particular in where their drawers belong. So that is something to keep in mind. Just a little tip, learn from my mistakes, because it's no fun trying to fit the drawers back where they belong if you really have no idea. Let's go ahead and do the drawers. Okay, got all 9 drawers painted for the first coat. Everything is still going to be drying for probably another hour or so, and then we'll come back and do coat number 2, and it's gonna start looking a lot better, so stay tuned. All right, everything is dry. So like I told you before, I'm going back to that Rad Pad pack of sanding pads, and I am going to grab either a red or a yellow sanding pad. It really doesn't matter. Like I said, they're very, very similar. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do the yellow one, which is the super fine. And really what this is gonna do is help just smooth out any imperfections that may have occurred during the drying process. Maybe there was some debris that floated and landed on the top of your surface, and all of that is going to be smoothed out with this sandpaper. This isn't an essential step, but if you want to have a really flawless and smooth finish, I would highly recommend sanding between coats of paint. You're not looking to, you know, get down and like remove any of the paint. You're simply just going to go nice and easy back and forth to simply smooth out that surface. You will have a little bit of sanding dust. So again, you're just going to take some damp cloth and wipe back that dust before you go on to coat number 2. It's time for some hardware installation. But before we install it, I just want to update it a little bit. So one thing with the hardware is you can either keep the same hardware as is. So if I were going to keep it as is, that means I would basically clean it and put it back on exactly like this. Another thing that you could do is keep the same hardware but update the color, which is what I'm going to show you how to do. And then another thing you could do is completely fill in all of the holes on the front of the dresser in the drawers and then replace the hardware completely. So many options with pieces of furniture. It really just depends on the look that you're going for. Typically with French provincial pieces, I like to keep the original French provincial hardware, but just give it a little bit of an update. This is a little bit painted, or it has some patina, and it is that white color that the dresser was previously. So I didn't really think that this would look the best, just put right back on. So like I said, I'm going to show you how to update it. The first thing I'm going to do real quick is to clean it with some white lightning again. So again, just the spray bottle. I'm going to spray a little bit on my towel here and then just wipe it down. This will just really help with that adhesion of the product I am going to be putting on. And then I'll also rinse it off with the water. So in order to update this hardware, I am going to be using some gold gilding wax. The gold gilding wax is going to allow me to change the color of this hardware very easily, and I won't need a top coat. So for the gold gilding wax, all I gotta do is pop it open. And Dixie Belle also has other colors as well. They've got black gilding wax, and they've also got some bronze gilding wax, and they have a couple of other colors as well. So just keep that in mind when you're updating hardware. This is another option instead of something like spray paint. And so it's gonna come in a little container like this, and in there it's gonna be kind of goopy. And what you're gonna do is take a brush like so and get a little bit on your brush. Nothing too crazy, but you also kind of want to do it liberally. And then you're going to take your brush and just paint it on as you would maybe some paint. And then you're going to put it wherever on your piece of hardware that you want it to go. And because it's this waxy consistency, is really going to stick to your piece of hardware very nicely, especially if your hardware has some texture. If your hardware is slippery, it may not stick, and you may then have to scuff sand your hardware just a tad bit in order for it to grab on a little bit easier. So all you're gonna do is continue to rub that on until it's completely covered, and then you'll just let it sit in its spot. And then once you have all of them done, they'll all need to dry for a little while, about 30 minutes. And then once it's 30 minutes, you can come and take a cloth, rub some of it back, just any excess that won't stick, and then you'll be ready to go ahead and put on the hardware onto the drawers. So I'm just going to put them on the rest of the 8 pieces here, and then we'll let it dry and reassemble the entire dresser. Time to put the hardware on. I went ahead and just put everything back into my container after it dried with the gilding wax. And so now I'm just gonna do the same process I did when I took it off, and that is to just go ahead and use my screwdriver to put everything back on. All right, and just like that, we've got a done piece of furniture. It is time to get this over on the staging wall so we can take photos for listing it on Facebook Marketplace to sell. All right, guys, that concludes my beginner-friendly furniture makeover. I hope this flip really inspired you and really was able to show you how easy it can be to begin furniture flipping. Really, all you need is a piece of furniture, some good furniture paint, which is all linked down below in the description, and some patience, you guys. This is such an easy flip to do. It doesn't require too many steps. Now, I want you to take easy with a grain of salt because, again, you have to still have the correct materials to paint with and to flip a piece with. You can't just go slapping wall paint on any piece of furniture. You need to take the steps that I described in this video, such as prepping really well, using the correct paint, and then the last thing that I wanted to mention was staging your furniture. I try my best to stage my furniture each and every time that I take photos of it because it really just allows the buyer to just really see it in their home and what it could be. If you guys have any last minute questions about how to get started on flipping furniture, go ahead and leave them down below in the comments. I'll do my best to get to them. And then if you are a seasoned furniture flipper and you know the answers to some of those questions, I would love your help on answering those comments. But again, thank you so much to Dixie Belle for sponsoring this video and for just really making some quality products to allow us as furniture flippers to get pieces and turn them into something new and something that was once loved and now is going to be loved again. I'm going to be listing this piece on Facebook Marketplace right after I take some photos, and something that you really want to make sure you do is grab as many angles as possible. Facebook Marketplace allows 10 photos, so I suggest that you utilize all 10 of those photo slots. Make sure that you describe your piece in the description and that you do dimensions. You must give them dimensions because they're bound to ask anyway, since they're going to want to see, and make sure that it's going to fit in their place that they are thinking about putting your piece of furniture. When you're talking about pricing, it's important that you take into consideration how much experience you have, as well as the quality of the actual piece, how long did it take you, and so on and so forth. Those are some things that you really need to think about. And then at the end of the day, you need to think about how much money you want to be paid hourly Don't go crazy and outrageous wanting $80 to $100 an hour if you're just starting out. I typically shoot for the $30 to $40 an hour range after all of my material costs are in there. And sometimes it can become a little bit more than that because of the quality of the piece. I feel as I can get a little bit more. So I'm gonna be listing this piece probably around $450. I like to do that with these size dressers. Typically I try to stay around the same price for the same style and number of drawers and things like that. So I've had some pretty good luck with French provincial pieces. They're some of my favorites to flip, and they honestly look great in any color. I like the way that the black sands here looks. It dried very, very smoothly, so I'm super pleased with the finish of it. All right, you guys, that is gonna conclude this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying Flipmas as much as I am, and I'll see you in a couple more days for Flipmas Day 5. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the flip side.